I'm Jane Eyre from the BBC Bite-Size English Literature podcast, and I'm here today to summarise Jane Eyre. So the novel kicks off with Jane Eyre living with her aunt, Mrs. Reed, a cruel woman who locks her in a red room which is supposedly haunted. Eventually, Mrs. Reed sends Jane Eyre off to boarding school at Lowood School, where her teacher, Mr. Brocklehurst, is equally as cruel. Her best friend, Helen Burns, then dies of consumption, and for whatever reason, Jane Eyre decides she still wants to teach there. Finally, things start to look up for Jane Eyre when she becomes the governess of a young Adele at Thornfield Hall and begins to fall in love with her employer, Mr. Rochester. When a fire breaks out at Thornfield Hall, it's Jane that saves Mr. Rochester, who goes on to blame the servant, Grace Poole, for the incident, but Jane is suspicious. Jane is surprised to learn that Mr. Rochester is in love with her and wants to marry her, not Blanche Ingram. When the wedding day comes, however, a man arrives at the church only to tell them that they cannot marry because Rochester is already married. Rochester confesses he does indeed have a wife, Bertha, who is supposedly mad, but he still wants to be with Jane. Jane refuses to be with a married man, however, and runs away. She becomes homeless and sick until the Rivers family take her in and nurse her back to health. Things start looking up once again when Jane inherits her uncle's wealth and finds out that the Rivers are her cousins. St. John Rivers then asks Jane to join him in his missionary work as his wife. When she hears Mr. Rochester called to her in a dream, however, she knows that she can't marry someone she doesn't love. But when she returns to Thornfield, she discovers that the building has burnt down. Rochester is now living at Ferndene, his usual retreat, now blind. Jane rushes to him and they finally marry. The novel concludes with them raising their children and Rochester regaining sight in one eye. For all of your revision needs, don't forget to head on over to the BBC Bite-Size website.